Danielle. I'm Ken Dunton, and I'm a professor in the Department of Marine Science here at UT.
Nice to meet you.
Nice
Thanks
to meet you
for
too,
coming in
Danielle.
today.
I enjoyed my trip here. It was a beautiful day to drive up from the coast
Okay,
and see campus so busy with a bunch of stressed out students.
that's how it is.
2 weeks, we're 2 weeks away.
We're getting really close.
Yeah.
So we understand you work in marine biology, right?
Right.
How long have you been in that field?
So I've been in, counting all the degrees, what have you. I've been in marine science since I was your age. I started at the University of Maine, but before that, I was very interested in marine biology. I was probably a marine biologist when I was 2 years old, and that's. I mean, you know, we all are curious about. You know, I mean, I think kids are naturally curious. Every time I hang out with my own kids or other kids, there's that level of curiosity that is so unique to young people, and you think, you know, somebody who's half your height, they look at the ground, they see so much. What did you see? Because they're so much closer. These spiders and snakes and ants and what have you. And when in the marine and on the beach, it's the same way. They just are great. You know, when you're young, you're a fantastic observer, and I think that, you know, from early on, I just loved the ocean. So I was determined when I was young that that's what I wanted to do, is do marine science. So I ended up working on the beaches as a lifeguard for many years. Because then, when you sit on the beach and you're looking at the ocean, you see a lot. Because it's your job. You got to look at the ocean and look at what people are doing. But you see sharks swim by. You see things out there. You see. Here in Texas coast, you see a lot of turtles. But where I worked on the East Coast, it was horseshoe crabs. People loved playing with the horseshoe crabs, and it was always these prehistoric looking creatures that kids, that they didn't understand them, they wanted to kill them, they wanted to throw rocks at them. So there's always an opportunity for education there. They're really ancient animals. They go way back, and they're very important for you guys. Since some of your medicine, the eyes of horseshoe crabs are very complex, and they're used in eye research. But in any event, so I started at the University of Maine. So I've been academically. So I've been doing this for a good 35, 40 years. You know, good part of my life. Yeah,
All right.
it's a vocation and a career. So, but that's basically academically. It started with the University of Maine, and as I said earlier, went to graduate school, Western Washington, then University of Alaska, and then did a postdoc at the University of Texas down in Port Aransas, and that led to a faculty position. So that's how it all evolved.
Okay, so based on these findings that you're telling us about how different things like change in temperature are affecting the alkalinity and the general like ice melting and all that stuff, is there anything that we can do in general? I know, like, reducing your carbon footprint.
Yeah.
What can you tell us?
That's a question I get asked a lot. Who can do it? And there's a saying. I mean, what we've been talking about so far is that basically this cascade of events that's happening, and how can we interrupt that cascade? And there's a saying: think globally, act locally. And then, you know what? That's a pretty powerful way to look at things. Is that it just seems like, gosh, everything is going bad. What can I possibly do? The world's a big place. What can I do to make a difference? Well, if every one of us worked locally, all right, to make a difference, it would, on the large scale of things, it would be significant. So I encourage students until they graduate. I encourage them to get involved. You know, here in Austin, and there's a lot of students here, which is great. It's a very powerful group and learn and in this case, in your case in particular, get involved with campus organizations that are doing activities that benefit the community, whether or not that's just simply something as simple as picking up trash, but could be much more involved with much more involved in terms of working with community outreach organizations that reach out directly to at-risk residents in Austin, people that are lower social income and are single parents, what have you, and in terms of one of my former undergraduate students that went on to do a graduate degree with me, she worked 3 or 4 days a week. She'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and work at a soup kitchen line here in Austin. She,
Wow.
every other day, she'd be out there at 4 o'clock in the morning serving, I don't know what group she worked with here in Austin, but she, was very committed to helping local people. And that's a way, you might think, well, what does that do to the environment? Well, it has a lot to do with the environment. You get to talk to people. You get to talk about, they ask you what, because they want to talk to you. They love talking to students. What are you doing? Well, this is, what are you majoring in? Then you can start talking about, science. You can start talking about the environment, how important it is to recycle, for instance. And you don't realize how much of an impact that has, because people start talking to each other. You know what? I told a student this morning, and she was just telling me how important it was, how easy it was to recycle. I can just take my bottles right down the street here, this recycling center. Why am I just throwing them in the trash? You can start something big by just talking, by doing something, by not even knowing you're making an impact. I mean, by helping people do something that might not seem to you environmental, but you end up talking to folks. And that's how I reach out to a lot of my, a lot of people my age who I know voted for Mr. Trump, who are not very environmentally aware. I have really made inroads with them. I've really taught them a lot. They are completely looking at things differently since they've known me in the last few years. They're much more environmentally conscious, and they see what I'm doing and the impact I'm having through my science and my grad students, and it makes sense. It totally makes sense. Some of the, recycling, for instance. And it makes sense to have a plastic ban in a coastal town. So we're one of the few towns in the state in which we have banned plastics in Port Aransas. Now, and what the neat thing is, the city council, all the students, we at MSI really got behind this. We were really the drivers of this plastic ban. So the city council passed it and it became law, and the lovely state of Texas, there was a law decided that small towns couldn't enforce these bans. In other words, they challenged it in court. And so it's in court, it's in the legislature right now. It's being discussed again. But because everybody there, even though Port Aransas is a Republican, very Republican group, except for the university, right, the MSI. They have voluntary stayed stuck with, the whole community is stuck with that plastic ban. There's no more plastic grocery bags blowing all over the beaches. We have turtles everywhere that will eat this stuff. And so it really has made a difference. And that's through just talking, just like we're doing right now, but just talking to people, being aware, having, giving talks, giving presentations, Rotary Club, Kiwanis Club, whatever, just getting out. So that's how you can make a difference, I think, is just getting out and meeting with the public and so on. So, they wasn't sure, huh?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so that's I think. And then after you graduate, get your degree, you can do bigger things. You can work with NGOs. You'll be trained. You'll be very well trained here from UT, and you'll have a science background. And then you can work with NGOs and other like-minded groups to make a difference at a higher level, and where you're mentoring other students and other younger people and to follow your lead. So.
Okay, sounds good.
But I would still encourage you to collect trash on the beach. That's fine. I still do that. Do that all the time.
Okay, so it seems like you didn't have any trouble at all deciding on what you wanted to do. You said from the time you were 2 years old, you were pretty set. Or did you ever kind of waver?
Well, I wanted to do marine science, but as I said, it's a huge field.
Right.
So I'm not to think that it was easy for me. It was not. It was not, because you have to be. It's a very, very competitive field. It really, like most science fields, it's hard. You gotta have, and I don't. I know that a lot of people. There's no question about it. I didn't graduate top 10% of my high school class. No way. I was maybe the top 20%, 25%, but I was top 10. I was definitely top. I definitely was not a Dean's Honor graduate at the University of Maine. I love Maine, and I did well there, but I was not. I was a 3.1, 3.2 student. That's nothing really special. What I had going for me was again, passion. I really, and you mentioned resilience, just,
You had it.
yeah, I mean, you gotta bounce back. And you know what, there's a saying, well, something I love to tell the students, that when the paper doesn't accept it, or they don't get a particular grant funded, or I said, you know what, through failure lies opportunity. Through failure lies opportunity. Remember that. If you fail at something, another opportunity will open, or several opportunities. You just don't give up at all. I mean, you keep at it. And so when I finished my master's, at Washington University, I really didn't know what to go next. You know what? I wasn't ready for a PhD. I thought, I am so tired of school. 6 years. It was 6 years, I was burned out. The last thing I want to do was a PhD. I'm not smart enough for that. I barely got through, I felt like I barely got through my bachelor's and master's in terms of just being burned out, you know. Sure, I did it all, it worked out fine, but I felt like, you know, I'm just tired. I mean, I'm not tired, I'm burned out on school. And so I really didn't know what I was gonna do next, because I could see how competitive it was. I was working different jobs, and I became a certified diver. I was diving all over Puget Sound, Washington, most beautiful place in the world to dive. I had a job working for the Department of Ecology of the state of Washington. It was fantastic. But to do that, I had to become a diver, and I did. I started at the University of Maine, diving under the ice. That's where my ice diving started, was the University of Maine. Diving on the coast of Maine, under the ice in the wintertime. As your age, I decided I gotta meet somebody on this campus, a professor who's willing to have me in their lab. And that's how it all started off. And they said, yeah, you can work in my lab. I can't pay you. I don't care about being paid. I just want the research experience. I want to work in somebody who's doing research. And I'm happy to, you know, so from there it just took off. Well, I got this project on the coast. I'm looking at sea urchins and I'm looking at sea urchin feeding behavior, and I'm looking at sea star feeding behavior. You go down and pick up the sea urchins and pick up sea stars. What are you eating? And it was cold. I mean, you know, Maine's cold. It's freaking, it was ice forming in the middle of winter, and we pushed the ice back, put on our wetsuits. Back then it was wetsuits, not dry suits. And but you know, when I was 19 years old and 20 years old, I had, you know, so much energy. You know, it's no problem. You know, you get cold, but so what? I mean, you're young. You guys can handle it. You know, my 50-year-old professor now, he was hurting. You know, he didn't have the metabolism of a 20-year-old. So you know, you can do anything when you're young. You really can. It's just amazing what you have in front of you. So. So that diving experience got me a job in Washington, and then it got me eventually led to a really neat research program in Alaska, and so it was just serendipity, right? There's a whole, I love that movie, the Serendipity movie. You know what I mean? The chick flick.
That romantic comedy.
Yeah, I love that, because to me, that's what it's. I know the elevator scene is hilarious. Remember the elevator scene in Serendipity? But that's what it's like in science. It really is. All these doors open. Which one will you walk into? You know, what floor you end up on, and whatever floor you end up on, you just have to take advantage of that. You know, when you see it, when an opportunity is in front of you, sometimes you don't even see it, and so sometimes it's right in front of you, and you've got to be able to see it. And that's what happened between my master's and PhD. I had no idea what I was going to do. In fact, I was really close to being unemployed. I was unemployed for a few months. What am I going to do? I'm eating peanut butter and bread. That's all I had. I had a girlfriend who was a bartender, made a lot of money pretending bars, so she supported me for a little while. Then she got bored and said, I'm going to Europe. You got to go do what you have to do, but I'm going to go to Europe because I have a lot of money and I want to go travel. She came back after 6 months. I had my act together. I figured out, I ran into, I got another position through the university that took me to the Arctic. And I said, yeah, I'll go to the Arctic. I'll freeze my butt off. That's okay. And then when I was in the Arctic, I made an enormous discovery through geology. And that's how my research got started, because I've been a bunch of geologists who said, there's these rocks out there. I said, it's really cool. I said, rocks, that means there must be something growing on those rocks. Rocks are a really good substrate. And for things like algae, things are really productive, like kelp. And the geologist said, well, yeah, there are, but nobody seems to care about them. I said, I care. And he's diving out in the middle of the Arctic Ocean, and there's on this rock pile, and he said, yeah, there's all kinds of kelp growing on them. I said, tell me what this is. And so I ended up writing a little research proposal to go study the biology of this rock pile. We called it the boulder patch. And it turned out this rock pile was quite big and extensive. And here's the real kicker. So I wrote a proposal to work on it, and it turned out that it was that was in 1977, 78. Do you guys know what was going on? You probably weren't even born then. In the late 70s, the largest, what's the largest discovery of oil in North America? Where was it?
In Texas.
No.
Spindletop? No.
Was it in California?
That was an early discovery, yes. It's Prudhoe Bay. Prudhoe Bay, Alaska is the largest oil reservoir in North America. And they discovered oil in Prudhoe in the mid to late 60s. The pipeline, the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, was built in 1977. I was in the Arctic in 1977, my first year. And that's when I discovered this kelp bed community. And guess what? The kelp bed community just happened to be located on top of the most promising offshore oil reserves in the Arctic. So, you guys have heard of EIS statements, environmental impact statements, and you want to know how can I save the world? Well, basically, I've got this beautiful kelp bed community sitting on the most important oil discovery in Alaska. How are we going to protect it? And that's led to my PhD. And so, that is the kind of serendipity, I'm talking about. Just talking to a geologist, nobody paid any attention to him, but, you just connect the dots, and that's what it takes. So, by the way, my wife did come back from Europe and went with me to Alaska, and now I'm married to her. I mean, that woman came back and I married her. So, anyway, so that.
So you mentioned doing a little bit of research during your undergraduate career, right?
Yeah.
And that's where you started your diving in Maine. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that got started and
Well,
what it
basically,
you
I was
did?
almost exactly your age, and I was wandering around and looking for something I wanted to I realized being a lifeguard was not going to cut it for my whole life. It was, really a glamorous job back then. I mean, people went to the beach and a lot of girls and so forth, and that was fun. But it was not going to get me very far, and so I wanted to, I just wanted to do some real marine research, and so it meant walking around campus. I mean, you take classes and you meet professors, and just like you met me and said, well, I kind of like what you're interested in doing, and then if they're on campus, you say, do you doing anything in your lab? Can I work in your lab? And a lot of students ask me that, and I try to take it, all the students that ask me. I've got 2 or 3 undergrads working in my lab this summer. And so, and I ran into this one professor who was a phycologist. That means he works on algae, and he was working on the coast. The coast of Maine is absolutely stunning and beautiful, and lobsters are really good to eat. So I thought, any excuse to get down to the coast and eat lobsters, I'm on it. So, and I was also on the swim team. I was in the University of Maine swim team. I swam fly, and I loved doing that. But it was, and since I was a good swimmer and a diver, he said, well, I've got this project, and I could use some diving help. And that's when I was learning to dive, actually. That's what got me diving. I said, okay, I'll learn it. I'll become a diver. And so, and although I wasn't sure, what the research was going to be like, I wanted to help out grad students in that lab, and they took me on, and so after the first year, it worked out really well. I mean, I learned a lot, and I was a good part of their lab. I was helping them a lot. In between, whenever I could, I would work on weekends and help them with their field research, and that led, to me becoming part of their lab in terms of being on research papers and what have you, and then eventually getting paid. Eventually, the professor had enough money to pay me and I spent the whole time, instead of going back to lifeguard, I stayed in Maine and worked at his lab, and worked all summer long, diving and doing research, and being paid for it, and that was great. And by doing that, you also make connections through that professor with, talking about grad school, well, who should I go work with? Well, that professor at Maine could give me ideas and recommendations on, okay, you should try this person at Washington or this person at California. They're really good and they're taking on students and they have money to support you, that type of thing. So those connections are really important. Making those linkages is one of the benefits of doing research in a lab. Even if you're not getting paid, you come up with those connections. And working with the grad students and the postdocs. Those are people that will go on eventually and get real jobs, and that you might end up wanting to go to their lab and become their grad student. And that has happened at UT. There's some marine science undergrads are now grad students with former postdocs at MSI that were there, working with another professor as a postdoc. Now they're a faculty member, and they've got a UT undergraduate as a grad student, right? It's all about those connections, but you can't make those connections unless you are in the trenches, right?
Right.
So, does that help?
Very much.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned a couple things about how important passion is and sticking with it, just kind of paying attention to the things other people aren't paying attention to, like those geologists in the Arctic.
You're a good interviewer.
Thank you.
You are. You know a lot of stuff.
Is there any other big advice that you could give us as undergraduate students, or things that maybe that you wish you would have done differently you can tell us about?
Yeah, I saw that question. I thought that was a really good question. And I was thinking, I really enjoyed my time at the University of Maine. What could I have done differently? Because I played soccer. I love being in sports. I played soccer most of my life. I was on the soccer team too, but I had to drop all that stuff. By the time I was a sophomore, you couldn't do science. You couldn't be a science major and be on the swim team at Maine. It was impossible. All the labs, everybody I talked to, how are you doing this? Don't you have lab? No, I'm an education major. We have no labs.
We get it. Yeah, we get it.
Yeah, I figured you guys would get it, because labs take so much time, and writing those lab reports, and so. And in fact, I'm advising an undergrad who's on the swim team. She actually swims fly like I did. Her name is I'm gonna tell you her name, but she's trying really hard to be a marine science major and be one of the top swimmers in the country, really. But it's really hard. So one thing I didn't do that I wish I had done as an undergrad is and it's kind of related to why I'm teaching this course now every 2 years, marine botany in Mexico, is study abroad. I wish I had gone abroad. I wish I'd done some research somewhere else than in Maine. I wish I'd gone anywhere, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, South Africa, wherever. That is one of the things I wish I had been able to do. I wish I had taken time to learn languages better. I learned Russian almost fluently as a grad student. It was hard, but because a lot of Russia has 80% of the Arctic, so I had to read Russian literature. I had to really be on top of it. So, but I learned it as a grad student, that's a PhD student actually. And then I went to Russia many times. But I wish I had learned, like Spanish. We're so close, Texas in particular. I wish I was fluent in Spanish, much more fluent than I am. I'm barely able to. I can converse with at a very elementary level. It's really easy to pick up languages when you're young, or much easier. Nothing's easy, but it's certainly a lot easier when you're young. And try to do whatever research experiences you can take advantage of within your physical means, your financial means. Do it because it'll broaden your horizons. But again, it'll be because you don't really know what you want to do. I thought I did, and I did continue on, but marine science, I didn't know if I was going to become. I thought I was going to become a marine geologist. I could have been, on big ships, drilling ships, and looking at cores and reconstructing paleoclimate records from deep sea cores. Who knows? But it might not have worked at all for me. I was really lucky, like I said. I happened to be in the right place, right time. But you don't really know at this early stage. Do lots of different, take advantage of different opportunities, broaden your horizons or experiences as much as you can, because you might run into something that you say, wow, I never thought. I mean, the jobs that are out there now did not exist when I was a student. They did not exist. Jobs that are in 10 years from now will exist that are not existing right now. You guys will probably, you could be one of the people creating that new job. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, computer science did not exist as a major at all when I was at the University of Maine. It was not, I mean, it was hardly a major. I mean, I certainly can tell you molecular biology didn't exist. I mean, at all. So, it's a really good, and the other thing is making the connections. You build references, all right? People that you normally wouldn't meet and become friends with could become very important to you later on. So that's that would be my. I think that's what I wish I had done more of, is getting out. I mean, I did good getting into a research lab, but I wish I'd taken the time to study abroad and learn another language besides Russian. Wish I knew Spanish a lot better. So, yeah.
Okay, anything else you wanted to add?
No, I really enjoyed doing this. I've done it before, and I enjoyed talking to you guys. Thanks for picking me.
Thanks
I really
for
appreciate
talking
it.
with us.
It's really fun just to sit down and talk to you all and see what you're doing. I'm really curious what you're up to and where you're going after this. I guess it'd be really fun, like Bio 101C. Remember the essay? What do you want to be when you grow up? Where do you think you're heading?
Yeah.
It'd be fun to come back to those in 3 years and see where you end up.
Yeah. Yeah. Very much.
So.
Mine's already changed.
Yeah, are they?
Yeah.
Cool. So, and all right. Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks a lot. And you're very good interviewer, Danielle. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
I think you might want to contact CNN.